Selma Hortense Burke was an American sculptor and a member of the Harlem Renaissance movement. Burke is best known for the bas-relief portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt that may have inspired the profile found on the reverse side of the dime. Burke described herself as a people's sculptor and created many pieces of public art, often portraits of prominent African American figures like Duke Ellington, Mary McLeod Bethune, and Booker T. Washington. In 1979, she was awarded the Woman's Caucus for Art Lifetime Achievement Award. She summed up her life as an artist by saying, quote, "I really live and move in the atmosphere in which I am creating," unquote. Selma Burke was born December 31, 1900 in Mooresville, North Carolina, the seventh of 10 children of Reverend Neil and Mary Elizabeth Colefield Burke. Her father was an AME church minister who worked on railroads for additional income. Her father died when she was 12, and at the time her mother was 101 years old. As a child, she attended a one-room segregated schoolhouse and often played with the riverbed clay found near her home. She would later describe the feeling of squeezing the clay through her fingers as the first encounter with sculpture, saying, quote, "It was there in 1907 that I discovered me," unquote. Burke's interest in sculpture was encouraged by her maternal grandmother, a painter. Although her mother thought she would pursue more financially stable careers, her mother was quoted as saying, "You know, you can't make a living at that." Burke recalls her mother saying this referenced her desire to study art. Burke attended Winston-Salem State University before graduating in 1924 from St. Agnes Training School for Nurses in Raleigh. She married a childhood friend, Durant Woodward, in 1928, although the marriage ended in his death less than a year later. She later moved to Harlem to work as a private nurse. She was employed as a private nurse to a wealthy heiress. The heiress later became a patron of Burke and helped her become financially stable during the Great Depression. After moving to New York City in 1935, Burke began art classes at Sarah Lawrence College. She also worked as a model in art classes to pay for that schooling. In 1935, during this time, she had also become involved in the Harlem Renaissance cultural movement through her marriage to writer Claude McKay, with whom she shared an apartment in Hell's Kitchen neighborhood of Manhattan. The relationship was brief and tumultuous. McKay would destroy her clay models when he did not find the work to be up to his standards. But it introduced Burke to artistic side of a community that would later support her burgeoning career. Burke began teaching in Harlem Community Arts Center under the leadership of Augusta Savage, sculptor, and would go on to work for the Works Progress Administration on the New Deal federal project. One of her WPA works, a bust of Booker T. Washington, was given to Frederick Douglass High School in Manhattan in 1936. Burke traveled to Europe twice in the 1930s, first on a Rosenwald Fellowship to study sculpture in Vienna in 1933 and 1934. She returned in 1936 to study in Paris with Aristide Maillot. While in Paris, she met Henri Matisse, who praised her work. One of the most significant works from this period is Frau Keller, 1937, a portrait of a German Jewish woman in response to the rising Nazi threat, which would convince Burke to leave Europe later that year. After returning to the United States, Burke won a graduate scholarship to Columbia University, where she would receive a Master of Fine Arts degree in 1941. Selma Burke died at age 94 on August 29, 1995, in New Hope, Pennsylvania, where she had lived since the 1950s. Selma Burke's work is largely known for her bas-relief portrait of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, but her contribution to society is much greater than that. Selma Hortense Burke, a noteworthy American that you may or may not know about.